Sometimes I compare real estate to dating, right? And so talking to an expired is basically going up to your friend that just got dumped and saying like, hey, you just got dumped.
Welcome to the Road to Real Estate with Jon and Lauren, where we discuss becoming a new agent and how to get through this business. We're also on Instagram at the Road to Real Estate. Ooh, it's cold out there. We can help you stay a little bit warmer with some hot coffee. So stay to the end of this podcast, and we can tell you how to make this Nespresso machine yours. Welcome to the Road to Real Estate podcast. I'm Jon, and I have Lauren with me. She's my co-host and team lead. Say hi.
Hi, guys.
We're starting this podcast because we want people to know what it's like to become a real estate agent, what it's really like, and our ins and outs, do's and don'ts, all that fun stuff. Hopefully we take someone who's interested in real estate and we take them all the way from the licensing part to their first contract, all that stuff. And we're going to say what we've done. I'm the rookie. She's the pro. And I'm going to have Lauren introduce herself now. Go ahead.
Hey, guys. I'm Lauren Kermani. I am a broker here in Georgia, and I have been a real estate agent since 2011. I got into it in kind of a roundabout way. My husband was actually building houses, and I came into real estate to be his listing agent right as the market crashed in 2008. And so we put everything on hold and circled back about 2011, and I became a proper agent without a builder, just on my own. And I have done that ever since. I started as a single agent, and I've grown a small team here in North Atlanta. And I got my broker's license in 2016.
Nice. I'm Jon. I've had my license for all of 3 months. I'm a super rookie. I got into this because we moved to Georgia. Lauren sold us our house. And through leaving another industry, I had a little midlife crisis. And so I ended up reaching out to her, and she's the one that encouraged me to go get my license. So I've been learning from her and all the other people over at our brokerage. And that's pretty much it. I'm just the rookie. But we are going into spring. So I'm going to have Lauren talk to you a little bit about a short segment on our spring market and what that is.
So real estate is hyper local, so you may or may not see this in your area. However, in Georgia, we are not snowed in. We might see snow once or twice a year, but our spring market starts about mid-February. And so what that means is homes start coming on the market. People are listing. If you're making phone calls to find buyers or sellers, they're much more productive. And our spring market goes from February until May. And that's really a very hot time in the Georgia market.
Nice. Our first topic that we're going to try and get into today is what to expect to be a real estate agent. Everyone's seen HGTV. They've seen people selling houses. They've seen Selling Sunset, which is a Netflix show. And all that stuff is people showing houses. And there's so much more to be an agent. And I think there's such a gap between what people think an agent is and what an agent actually does that 80% of agents quit within their first year or two. So that's a huge number of people that think one thing, get into the industry and realize it's something completely different. And so let's get into that a little bit in terms of what to expect to be an agent. Do you want to take the lead?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look online, even something like a House Hunters, you see people see 3 houses, they choose one, they move forward, right? It becomes a very cut and dry process. In reality, you're dealing with people and emotions and finances and relationships, and it's a lot messier. I would ask of the people watching, how many of you picked one of 3 houses and just moved forward with your life, whether that was a rental or a buy? Typically you see more than 3 in your lifetime or in your choice. And so, I think from the very beginning of the conception of what real estate is, we have this idealized view of it, right?
Agreed. I mean, when we were looking for a house on our second house with you, we looked for on and off again for months. So one thing I noticed as soon as I got my license, which we'll talk a bit about on how to get your license in future episodes, I'm sure, but is you get there and then your license, your realtor, you've got everything you need, except for you have no idea what to do. It's how, like, getting that first person to look at that first house takes so much work. It's not like, oh, I got a realtor and they're handing you people in homes. You join a brokerage, they handle all the legal stuff, but they don't hand you clients. Like, I think a lot of people think they get their license, they're going to go into their brokerage, that brokerage is going to hey, these people are trying to buy a house, or these people are trying to sell a house. It's your job to do it. No, you have to find those people yourself. And then obviously there's a lot of different ways to do that. And what I found when I first got my license is all your friends and family. If you're new to an area, such like me, I don't have a ton of those. So you start having to reach out to people that you know. And then you also have to basically, in my case, become a telemarketer. I'm on the phone every day calling people that may or may not want to buy a house. So far, I've been lucky. I haven't had any angry people to answer the phone, but let's get into that a little bit more. How was it for you when you started?
Well, I started in a completely different market, John. It was 2011. The market crashed in 2008. We had record numbers of foreclosures. Homes were sitting on the market for 90 days, 100 days, 200 days, 400 days. It was not unheard of. And so the way I started my real estate career was through expired listings, right? About 50% of our market was expired. That's really different than today's market, because at this point in today's market, when you look at, I'll use the Atlanta metro area, it's still less than 10% of houses are expiring. And so that's a much smaller market percentage than 50%. So coming out the gate, none of my family or friends were buying or selling because it was a hard time. People had just lost their jobs. People wanted to sell houses. There were very few buyers out there. So finding people became a little bit more challenging. And so I went into the expireds market. You may not know what an expired is. And so an expired is a listing that has been on the market for longer than the listing period. And so when you sign a contract to list your house, there's a start date and an end date. If that end date comes and goes without your house selling, then your listing expires on the MLS, which is the multiple listing service. And when that happens, other agents can see it and they know that it's going on. And at that point, as a seller, you have the choice to sign up again with that same agent, not sell your house, or sign up with a different agent. And so there's an opportunity there, especially for agents who are experienced with listings that had expired or failed to sell. And so that was a very large part of the market back in 2011 when I got started. Like I said, today it's more of 10%, but there's still a group of agents that are working those kind of leads. And so
It's
that's how
definitely
I
a
started.
different vibe than the
Yeah.
type of work. Because it's just think of reaching out to a
Yeah.
person who's had their house in the market for 3 to 6 months. The agent that they just had let them down, and now you're calling them out of the blue saying you're going to do it better. It's one of those ones where you got to really prove yourself. Probably going to want to have a thicker skin. It's a whole different world of real estate. Like I said, there's part of real estate for everybody. Not everyone's going to do it the same way. I have no interest in calling expireds. I'll be honest with you. I feel like I get that first angry customer, and I think I'd be done for the day.
Well, Jonathan, it is definitely a different sector of the population because, sometimes I compare real estate to dating, right?
Mhm.
And so talking to an expired is basically going up to your friend that just got dumped and saying like, hey, you just got dumped.
Yeah, I'm here with you. I've been
And
friend
so,
zoned for a long time. I'd like to come out of it.
yeah, they're still a little bit raw. It's a little hard, but I didn't do it alone either, right?
Mhm.
I had a coach. I was taking a class. I took, it was very intense. I was role playing. I was script practicing. It wasn't something where I just randomly called people on the phone. There was definitely a plan in place. And so when it comes time for real estate, I think that's important to know that when you align yourself with programs that have education or coaching or some kind of information behind them, it feels really different than just being alone out there in the abyss, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. I've noticed as a new agent that trying to reach out and meet people and stuff like that, it is still a seller's market right now. We're in a little bit of a fluctuation. If you're priced
Mhm.
appropriately, things do sell. Like I did an open house this weekend. An hour after I left that open house, the listing agent let me know that they had 2 offers. So I mean, it's good. They weren't from me, but they were for somebody. So stuff is selling, which is good. What is the best way to become an agent? This is something you're considering doing. I know how I did it, but obviously, since we're from two different eras of joining it, how did it go when you were
Well,
joining?
ironically, we have kind of similar. I did mine online as well. I had another full-time job that I was working at. I wasn't ready to just quit that. before I had something in the works. And so I did it online. Now, my online choices were much slimmer back then. And so this is a very national, large company that did not have, a lot of support. Looking back at what I learned in the online test versus what I feel like I took for the state test, they were vastly different. It did not prepare me very well at all. I did pass, knock on wood. You'll hear lots of stories of people who did not pass on their first time, but I was able to pass and it went well. But I did use a national company. If I were to do it again, or actually when I did my brokerage, right? Because to get my broker's license, you essentially have to go through a very similar course work. And I decided it was really important to me that I wanted to be in class because as a broker, you're learning a lot more of the law and how to interpret the law. And so paying attention to every detail and having those discussions and having those people around me was much more important. So I did that one in a physical classroom at the MLS, which is your multiple, or not MLS, at my realtor association, which is the board that I am a part of. Right. And that's where I did it. And so I have these two kind of opposite experiences, super generic national brokerage with only very vague learning, lots of vocabulary, lots of modules, not that practical. And then I had this in-person experience where it was very hands-on, lots of discussions that I have friends that I still talk to today.
Nice. So yeah, like you mentioned earlier, mine's similar. I think through luck of the draw. I'm not going to say one program is better than another, but I went through Kaplan, which was the way it worked was I went to a meeting with Keller Williams and they signed me up. So I didn't have to pay for it. It was paid for by Keller Williams. And what I found is I got into the class, I started looking around and everyone kept telling me, well, I failed the test 3 times. I failed the test 4 times. The test is so hard. The test is so hard. The test is so hard. And I would get up in the morning and I would get on a treadmill and I'd do all these practice questions because I was so afraid of getting to this test and failing this test. But what I found was I'd have a hard time on Kaplan. It was a tough course in terms of, and the way the questions were worded was like, man, what are they asking for? It could be this, it could be that. This is tough. But then I would get up in the morning and I'd be on a treadmill or whatever, and I would go on YouTube and do like national exam questions, real estate exam questions, top 10 questions. And I would answer the questions super easy. I was like, wow, but they were worded so different. So for me, because I went through Kaplan, when I got to the state exam and the national exam, it was like, this is exactly how Kaplan is worded every question they do going through this entire 75-hour course, that when I got to the test, I was like, I know this. I figured out how to answer those questions. Whereas I find a lot of people that I've talked to that went a different route felt like their course was easy. The test questions were the same, but the wording was so different from what is expected from the national and the state exams that they got to the national and state exams, even though they knew the content, they weren't used to the way that the questions were worded. And then that's what was causing them to fail. It's not that they're dumb or couldn't study, or it's just you weren't brought into that line of questioning in that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I agree that there is a certain way that the test questions are written that you have to really search for what are they asking for. I think that's a really good point. And then you were really good about doing a lot of like test prep and online tests. That wasn't so much available when I did my license. I didn't quite have a dial-up modem, but it was definitely before. Now with all the stuff, that I just did, there weren't as many test prep. My test prep were like paper and like I bought books and things and did workbooks, those are my test prep. But nowadays they have these cram courses. They have them through some of the private companies locally. They have them through the board of realtors. Even your MLS might have them. They're so valuable, right? Because
Yeah.
it can show you what you can do wrong, you can figure out what you're doing wrong and fix it before you that test point. Because you have to pay what, like $100 or
It's
$150
120 now. Yeah. It's
every
120.
time you take the test.
Yeah. So, I mean, lots of people do it. I think big thing is just don't give up. If you're going through it and you're not getting there, there's always more courses. There's always more things to learn how to take that test. Like I said, I've met people who have done it 5 times. It's just what it is. But what would
Yeah.
you tell somebody that's not started a course, not done anything real estate related? They're just kind of thinking this is what I want to do. What is your best advice to them to like, should you get into real estate? If so, how would you go about it? Would you go recommend taking college courses because you can do it through college, doing it on their own, contacting a local brokerage? What is for you? What would you recommend?
I'd recommend a conversation. Reach out to Jonathan or myself, contact us. Just have a conversation and see if it's right for you. There's so many ways to do real estate. You need to figure out how you want to do it, right? I mean, even within our real estate realm, there's commercial, there's residential, there's property management. Those are just like giant overviews. Within each of those, there's so many subsectors. Like we're in the Atlanta metro area, but even in our area, to go from the top of what we consider Atlanta to the bottom, you could drive for 2 hours, right? It's a very large, whereas smaller cities, you might travel that far, but you'd be over like 3 or 4 MLSs. And so I'd say you need to think about how you want to be a realtor, how you want to be in real estate. What does that look like? Is it your full-time job? Is it your part-time job? And then I would connect with somebody that's already doing it. Even though Jonathan and I may not be in your state, we might have resources for you, because one of the cool things about real estate is you have so many connections all over the country and even all over the world of people. And so I'd start by having a class or an intro webinar.
That makes sense. And to even expand on that, beyond the commercial and the residential, within real estate itself, just within residential, there are a lot of ways to sell a house and get new customers. And that was one of the big things I struggled with when I first started thinking about becoming a realtor. I was taking these personality tests, going through my midlife crisis, and sales kept coming up. And I was like, dude, all I was picturing in my head is that greasy used car salesman. And when I first started looking at realtors, the stuff I was seeing on YouTube and stuff was a lot of people was like, I don't want to be that person. There's a better way to do it. So within real estate itself, there's a whole array of ways of doing it. There are the people that are going to pick up the phone and be calling expireds and for sale by owners, and they're pushing themselves. And then there's a more relaxed way where they're through actual connections with real people, real connections that you can build it. One may be quicker than the other. I don't know. I'm still new, but I just knew that I didn't want to be that person that was slick and wanted to move to the next sale. I want to make a good living doing real estate, but I don't want someone to buy a house for me or sell a house through me and have that he just took my money and ran kind of vibe. I wanted them to call me and go, you know what? I know someone else. I want to be part of that. I want them to invite me over for dinner after, like, I want to be part, you know what I mean? Like, I want a real relationship with that person, because I feel the other way. There are a lot of realtors out there that are advertising the amount of income they're making and not making a real connection with the person. To me, like I said, when I see them online or I see them, I was just like, I don't want that. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know how else to explain that, but there's a side to this business that's pretty greasy too. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think that's really real, Jonathan. And I think that society as a whole is demanding something different, right?
Listen,
We can see the Insta reels. We can see that social media lifestyle and that super polished look at me. I am the real estate agent. I don't know that that's going to be a sustainable way to do real estate moving forward, right? Being real, being there, creating those friendships and letting people know that you're there for them for more than just a transaction. I think that's what speaks to you specifically. And that's how you can find your place in real estate.
I'm not saying the other way is wrong, to be fair, because I know the people out there, there's good people doing all different things. And just because someone might be making a ton of money in real estate does not make them a bad person. I'm not trying to say that at all, but I do say there is a vibe out there that to me, it doesn't, just know that's not who I want to be. Does that make sense? It doesn't make it wrong.
Okay. Right. Yeah.
But so outside of having a conversation with somebody you've bought a house from or may have sold a house through, say you've never met me before, what would you tell me to do? Like, I want to get in real estate, I mean, I know how it actually went down because I did talk to you
Yeah.
first.
You did talk to me. Yeah. So I would probably actually do the same thing. I would have a conversation with you like, hey, let's have a coffee. Let's have a conversation. I do find that sometimes people get it wrong. And so I've had coffees and conversations with people and what they are expecting and what is going to happen are so vastly different that maybe it's not the right time. Or sometimes it's a knee-jerk reaction, right? However, when we do have a conversation, a real conversation, and there is a real interest in real estate, even if it's part-time, I encourage them to take the next step, which is to maybe go to a webinar and find out more about real estate. Like, just take the next step. We have several resources for webinars that you can go to and just find out if you want to sit through the class. It's a 75-hour class. If you do a traditional, well, in Georgia, different states have different licensing requirements, but in Georgia, it's a 75-hour salesperson license class. And what that looks like is that, once you commit to it, you want to finish it in a certain amount of time, because the longer amount of time goes, the further the test. And so you want to really commit to that when the time is right. And so that, I would say, the next step would be to do a webinar or a meeting or a face-to-face with a broker in order to find out if that's really a path you want to take.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you're doing an in-person class, you're going to do based on the schedule that they're going to give you. But I did find that since I did mine online, I knew that if I let time slip, it was going to get away from me. In 6 months, it's going to be up, and they were going to change the password, and I wasn't going to be able to get it done. So I went hardcore on it. I really pushed through that class and made sure I was on it every day. And initially, it was like, I bet I can do it in a month. I did do it in just under 2 months. But it was like an everyday effort.
Which is record timing, Jonathan. That's very fast.
I know me. Like, I go down that rabbit hole, and I can focus really hard. But once I'm distracted, it's gone. It's never going to happen. So I knew if I would have went, like, say, I'm going to aim for 4 months, we'd have got to 4 months, and I'd have had 10 chapters to go. There was no way I was going to be ready if I let time slip by, because I know me,
Well, and that's actually a really good point, because I don't know if I've told you this. The first time I signed up for the real estate course, I didn't finish it within 6 months. I didn't take the test. I didn't get all the modules done. I had the best intentions. I had a giant binder. I printed off everything, and I took all my notes. I had a vocabulary that I was writing down like I was, in high school again. I had all the pieces. But I was working full time. I was a stepmom. I had lots of things going on, and I didn't finish it. And so I had to pay an additional $200 or something ridiculous in order to just get back into the classes. And that second time, we had actually had a life crisis, a health crisis with my husband. And the motivation was there for me to get out of what I was doing and get into a new career so that I had more control over my income, which ultimately is one of the best driving forces for real estate, is the income. It is one of the few professions where you have no cap on your income.
Yeah, that's something we should probably touch on. People get into real estate and they think Keller Williams, RE/MAX, Century 21, whatever brokerages that are out there. Those are brokerages. You are your own business when you get into real estate. They handle the money and they handle the legal, which I mentioned earlier, but it's 100% up to you. You can make as little or as much as you want in real estate. You just have to put in the work. And that's one thing, there is no cap. There is no limit. You can do exactly what you want to do at any level. You can just sell to your friends and family and keep your license open and sell 2 houses a year, no houses a year. I mean, if you're a miracle worker, you well over up into the 30s. That's a lot of work. Whatever you want. What is your most productive year? How many houses have you done? Just throwing it out there.
I think, one of my, the year that I like the most is actually the year that my son was born. It's the same year I got my broker's license. It was in 2016. We wound up selling. We had about 40 transactions, and
That's
that
pretty serious.
me as a single agent.
Yeah,
right?
That's a lot.
And so that was really interesting, because I had the most going on in my life that year. I had several balls in the air, from my broker's license to being pregnant, and somehow, we just really knocked it out of the park. And that was really a great year. I feel like that was the year where everything kind of clicked for me. And so we've gotten close and kind of over in different ways. Production's kind of funny when you talk about production, Jonathan, because you talk about transactions, or you talk about GCI, which is your gross commission income, or, some people talk about volume. And it's funny because in 2016, it was still before our COVID years.
Oh
where
yeah.
all the prices raised. And so it's really funny because even though that year is kind of a banner year for me, because I learned a lot of lessons and I feel really good about what I did that year, it's also not the year that I made the most money.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you just
And
look at the
so,
house pricing between then and now, it's not even comparable. Things have gone
right.
crazy for 5 years.
Yeah, it was
Yeah, I
not
don't,
comparable.
for
But it's
me, it's,
interesting, what you consider success. Because you say, hey, what's your most? I remember that year as being like, man, I hustled. I helped a lot of people. I did a lot of things right that year. And yet it still is not actually the year I made the most money.
yeah,
So
no, it makes
there's
sense.
this,
I mean, but that's what time is like. You could have someone that sold 60 houses back in the 80s. They made, well, I mean, compared to today, nothing, one
mm-hmm,
transaction. So
yeah,
yeah, I don't like to do the money thing, but I did like to show how hard someone works. I prefer the transactions because to me, it's like that person's putting in the work because according to the NAR, which is the National Association of Realtors, the average realtor sells between 2 and 6 houses.
yeah,
Average.
which was significantly less last year. Have you seen those statistics?
I haven't yet. What are they?
Yeah.
Is it
Yeah,
one?
it was less than 10% sold more than two houses last year.
Yeah, it is a self-motivating business. It's something to note. If you're not very motivated and you don't get yourself in gear, maybe not real estate because you can just as easily make zero. Actually, it's less than zero because you pay your brokerage's fees and everything else. So as a new agent, I'm actually in the negative. Believe it or not, which is kind of scary, like I
Yeah.
pay my dues every month. And for us, that's $130. But then you also have to pay your Realtors Association, which is $500 a year. It does add up, and it is a little daunting. You just tell yourself like it's going to pay for itself. It's going to happen. It's going to go. So, but it
Yeah.
does. It is a little intimidating as you get into it because you're paying for a test. You're paying for the next test. You're paying for your license. You're paying your brokerage fees. You're paying your association fees. I'm sure I'm missing something else. Also, if you get a listing, you have to pay for
Upfront.
flyers and advertising and all that stuff. And you do it all in this, it's going to pay for it. So you got to be not afraid to take that jump. Chances are you're going to get into real estate and you're probably going to do a buyer first, probably not a seller. But I guess that's kind of 50-50, right? I don't know.
Yeah, it's not everybody, but a lot of times we talk about having 6 months reserve kind of ready when you jump into real estate, especially if you're going to sever whatever job you're at and jump in full time. 6 months is really the amount of money that you need to live on, right? There's things you can do in the meantime if you're trying to pick up little bits here or there that are in real estate, like being a showing assistant or helping people with open houses or things like that. You can pick up little pieces as you go, but really it's about 6 months before you do it. And that's if you jump in like full time, right? So having that money, which is a great segue because if you look at paying for a class, join the board, and then joining real estate and paying for all the tests you have to take, I would think that it's somewhere between 1,000 to 1,500
That's probably more
to
than
kind
that.
of
Like, I
off the
know
ground.
without the scholarship to Kaplan, it's $1,300 for that class. And
Wow.
so
Okay.
because we went literally one meeting at your local brokerage, a lot of brokerages will give you a scholarship to whatever class they're working with. Like I said, I don't know every class. There's a ton of them now, but yeah, go into your local brokerage, especially the bigger ones. Like I did Keller Williams, but I'm sure Remax and Century, they all do it. And there's no obligation to sign with that brokerage, but you can go to one of those classes and they basically give you a scholarship for your school with no commitment. They're going to stay in touch. They're going to do their work. They're pretty good at keeping you once you're in, but that is a thing. So you can save almost $1,500 right off the bat by just sitting through. I want to say the class was an hour, but to
Yeah.
do the numbers, I think 300 people signed up for that class. 50 showed up to the webinar to get the scholarship. And then an even smaller number even complete the course once they're in it. Even then, like you'll know if you're meant for real estate pretty early on because no one, unless you're in an in-person class, it's up to you to get through the course. If you can't get through the course, I'm not saying you're not going to be good at real estate, but there's something to learn that like you have to be on yourself to keep yourself motivated, keep yourself going. It's really motivation's everything, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, figuring out what your motivation is and why you're doing it, really has to stay at the forefront. And that's not just while you're getting your license, but that's also once you're in real estate, right? You need to continue that motivation. You don't just need it for a month or 2 or 6 months. You need it for the long haul.
And this is something I'll give everyone a tip. If you're thinking about getting into real estate, there's this thing called time blocking. I've never heard of it. All right. And then I got in, did my classes, and then I get out of my classes and they're like, now you want to block a certain amount of time every day to accomplish this goal in real estate. And a lot of people, it's calling people, you're getting on the phone, making reach out. It's not just strangers, but you're just people that are in your contacts, in your sphere, everything. And they block that time every day, no matter what, that time is blocked. And that's kind of what I did for getting through the course. But if you get into the habit of it before you even in real estate, it's amazing because then you get to lunchtime and you're like, your day's a success. You've already done this thing every day till it's done. And it's just one of those things you tell your friends and family, this from this time to this time, I'm unavailable. And you just do it and no interruptions. And it's like, you're already one step ahead of everybody else that's trying to get their real estate license, just by having that one thing. It's a scheduling thing, but just do it.
Yeah, that the time blocking, you're right, it's magical because when you're an entrepreneur in business for yourself, you don't have a boss, right? And it's easy to get distracted and it's easy to say, oh, it's important that I do this. Oh, it's important that I do that. You can get your priorities really turned upside down easily. And so by time blocking, you're creating this space that nothing can intrude on, right? And that kind of discipline is essential to make it in real estate.
And to make it work, for me personally, I actually went out and bought a little pocket calendar because I was trying to use my phone. I know it's a digital era and people put it in their phones, but once I put it in my phone, it was gone. It's not easy for me to open my phone to the calendar app and see my whole month and know how it's scheduled out. But for me, the pocket calendar is like, I know. And then because I am new agent, I'm still in my old business. So I have to schedule that around my real estate business. So that way they're not interfering with each other. So I write everything down. If there's a doctor's appointment coming up, I know when to schedule it. If this is that, I schedule everything around that time of my day. So that way I know that I'm getting through the core essentials of real estate and consistently doing them. So that way, hopefully it pays off in the near future, But if you don't do just those core basics, it's never going to pay off. Unless, don't get me wrong, everyone can have that one family member that calls you up and says, hey, we're going to sell our house. And cool, but I want to do this for a career. So I'm doing that block, and it works.
Yeah. And, there's a fun average that on average, every person in America knows 7 people that are going to move every year. And so you're no 7 people, although you're the 7 people that may or may not use you, right? They may have a relationship with another realtor. They may have somebody else that they've already contracted with, but you probably know 7 people that are going to move this year. And so when you talk to somebody, it's not that you're talking to that person about that they have to move. You're talking to that person and that person also knows 7 people. Because like Jonathan said, I didn't know Jonathan and his wife before they came to Georgia, but I knew their friend who moved here to Georgia. And I didn't know him before he moved to Georgia. I knew his friend, right? And so it's this web of people that you get into that you make those calls, that you're close to people and that people know that you're there and that you're working so that they can recommend you to their friends.
And that's super important. One of the things we went over in one of my classes, and I'm sure at least in real estate, I'm sure everyone's heard it, is everyone's going to buy and sell eventually. But how many brands of any specific item do you know off the top of your head? It's not a lot of brands, whether that be shoes or airlines or potato chips. It doesn't matter, that we only remember so many brands. And so what we're trying to do as agents is not push ourselves down people's throats, but be top of mind when it's time for them to do that transaction. So a lot of times it's just catching up with old friends, talking to people that may be interested, and they may not be interested today. They may not be interested in 3 months, but you want to be the name they think of when they are interested. Does that make sense? Like that was a big thing for me, was learning like, oh my gosh, just because you've talked to them 3 years ago and told them that you're a real estate agent, they might think about you after they've signed that listing agreement or exclusive buyer's agreement with another agent. Like, oh yeah, that's right. Our buddy John knows is a realtor now and totally forgot. You just want to be top of mind. It's not even, everyone, I mean, I come from a different line of work, but everyone in any profession has that one friend that used a different company or a different thing for whatever that is, just because they didn't think of it at the time. So I take it personally, like for my industry, it was like, I tattooed for years. I still tattoo. And you have that person who's like, look at this new tattoo I got. And you're like, I do that. That's what I'm
You're
like,
like,
oh,
oh,
yeah, you do. You do that. I totally, like, you know what I mean? But the same thing happens. I'm sure you've had people in your life that have bought or sold real estate that are close to you just because they didn't think of it at the time. And you're like, oh, why did you use them? I'm right here. I'm right here. I totally, it happens, And it's not out of negativity. They're not doing it on purpose. It's just you weren't top of mind, you know? It's just
yeah,
crazy.
yeah, yeah. And it doesn't always feel awesome.
No, it doesn't. It feels betrayal. I swear it does feel like betrayal because,
It tastes very bitter.
oh, it is. It's like, and I know it's nothing personal. And I've had friends that were just like, oh my God. I'm like, I was coming next week. I could have brought my equipment, could have done this. I could, like, it's just one of those things.
Yeah,
Like, I don't want to buy. And it's also, there's a thing is a lot of your friends and family don't want to bother you either. Like they're already working hard. They don't understand. They think they're intruding on you, having you do your work. There is a part of that in there too. So, I don't know.
yeah. It's interesting, and I think that's why calling and being a good friend, keeping that top of mind is so important, especially in somewhere like Georgia. We have more agents per capita on the north side of Atlanta, where Jonathan and I both live, work, and play, right? And that you forget that people are exposed to so many more realtors, real estate agents, people that are in the industry than other parts of the country. And so it's very interesting to see the sheer number of people that are licensed.
Yeah, that's totally, totally true. And also, as a new agent, something I've noticed is once you get your license and you sign with a brokerage, your email is going to go insane. There are going to be 6 trillion companies sending you stuff. And the phone calls I get, I'm nice to them because I know after I'm done talking to them and being nice to them, I have to call someone else that doesn't want to talk to me necessarily at the time. So I'm a lot nicer to telemarketers. But the amount of companies that go after agents, everyone's got a miracle thing to make you a well-to-do agent. All you have to do is pay them $500 a month. No big deal. They're going to give you all the first sale by owners and give you all the expires. There's some kind of dialer they're going to use. They got these perfect script that's going to make you think, and they're all out there. There's a whole industry of people just trying to make money off of new agents looking for the easy way out. I mean, I'm not immune to it. There were several times where I called Lauren, like, hey, this company's calling. They have all the listings for Smyrna and Buckhead. That's $1 million houses down there. Should we get this? Is it worth this? It's only $350 a month. We sell one house. There it is. It's such a miracle cure. It's right here. And it's for lack of a better term, it's basically scams. All that information they're trying to sell you, with a couple of minutes of work, you can find yourself, But yeah, there's a lot out there. Go ahead.
There's a lot out there. There's no shortage of people trying to separate you from your money. And I find that real estate is it's just that way, right? If you went to a 9 to 5 job, nobody's tempting you with products for you to do your job better, right? Your company has already done that. But as a entrepreneur, suddenly you're getting all those phone calls that your company would be getting. And so it makes sense. And you do need to protect yourself and kind of be ready. I like to be sold to. So I have a problem. I listen. Oh, that's great. That's great. But then I have to take a step back and go, hey, does this fit my plan? Does this fit what I want to do?
And if it's really that good, every other agent already bought it. Right? So you're just like, the big thing about it, there is a lot out there. And if it's too good to be true, it's too good to be true, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of baffled by how quick it happened, because obviously there's, unlike any other industry or any other job you do, I don't want to say any other industry because I'm sure there's another industry out there. Usually you get a job, they train you for the job, you do the job, and you're done. And then there are so many brokerages that you get your license, and you don't need a brokerage just to get your license. You do it on your own, and then you sign with a brokerage, and you're so lost. I feel like you're extra vulnerable because everyone has an answer. Totally fix this for you. Here's the script. Here's the thing. No problem. Just pay us. And I think it's so much easier to just be like, I don't know what else to do. I'm going to just do this and see if it works out. But by then, you put yourself, for lack of a better term, into the poorhouse real quick with all these different, for lack, I guess, schemes. Really, they're schemes, So
And some are legit things. But here's the thing: in order for those processes to work, a lot of times you have to be 100% in and do 100% of what they say. And if you can't commit to 100% of that program and give that your all, then you're not going to get the results they tell you. And so if you only do 70%, what is 70% of the ROI or return on investment, right? Like some agents, I'm just going to use Zillow as an example. Some agents have made tons of money off of Zillow. And so for them, that program works.
Mhm.
Other people, they don't do what they're supposed to do. They don't have the speed to lead. And so if you're not following that program exactly, then it's not worth the money you paid for it. I
I
also,
didn't even know about the Zillow. For me, the thing that gets me is the dialers call me all the time. Nespresso agent, Vulcan 7. And I'm not saying those aren't real products. They're real thing, but it does cost money, and there's still no guarantee on return.
Mhm. Yeah,
It's not a little bit of money either. Yeah, they're expensive.
they are
And I'm not saying they
expensive.
don't work, because if you go on YouTube, you're going to see a million videos of people that do them. But it
Mhm.
is a lot of money, and if you don't know what to do with it, it's
You
throwing
don't
it
know.
away. You know.
Yeah, and you have to have somebody to call in order to use a dialer. So there's also the cross between the two, like who are you going to put in there, and then you have to pay for that system. So I see that a lot of times, like, hey, we'll sell you this one product, but then you have to buy this add-on product to go in,
Mhm.
in order for it to work. And so that's where it becomes a very slippery slope. You add on, add on, add on, add on, and
Well,
the
it's the
price
thing is,
goes
if
up.
you're not making income, it really takes away. But if you're already making income in this industry, do you need it? You've already done it, right? So I don't know. It's one of those things that I'm not saying anyone is. I know I just called them all schemes 5 minutes ago, but as a new agent, it feels that way. It's predatory the way they come after you. I'll say that it's predatory. I'm not saying they're bad companies, but they do want to separate you from your money for sure, because that's how they make their money.
Yeah. A lot of times there's a setup cost and a monthly fee. And as long as you have paid the setup cost and monthly fee, you are not as valuable to them afterwards. Right. And
Yeah.
so they're looking for that initial input. You know, there's one other thing that I wanted to add, Jonathan, and I don't know that you know this about when I got my real estate license.
No, but I'm ready. I like stories. We're gonna learn about each other. Go
This
for it.
is really funny. So I told you my husband had kind of a health crisis. We were flying one day and we were in the hospital the next day having major surgery. And I was 29. And it really gave me that, that jump start for, ooh, something's wrong, right? I need to take control over my life. So that moment is when I re-enrolled in my real estate course. I paid the $200 to get back into the real estate course. And I got my license within like 60 days from that. I have a family member who is also a broker in the state of Georgia. So they do not do residential, but they just held my license. I got my license. Everything was great. And then I did absolutely nothing for 6 months. I stayed at my job. I didn't tell anybody I got my real estate license. I didn't do anything. All I did was my post licensing. I took a class online. I did all my qualifications. And then I sat there because I was.
Yeah. Well, let's be honest. It's tough. I mean, you go through the same thing every other realtor goes through. You get your license, but then what do you do? And hopefully in this podcast, in the next episode or two or three or four, we go through those processes that way people don't feel lost once they get it, because there's so much stuff that you can do and these small goals that you reach, but you still don't know how to do the thing, which is honestly for different realtors is going to be all different things. I'm sure we're going to go all the different pillars of things that you do to have a good business. And it's been said to me, pick 4. Don't do everything. Pick 4 that you like. If you don't like doing this, don't do it. Do that. If you don't like, there's a ton of stuff to go through, and we'll go through that in future episodes. I was lucky enough to have you, which made my interest. But
Yeah.
even still, even with you and all the guidance, there was a point where you're chomping at the bit, like, but you don't know which direction to go into because there's a lot of realtors in our office, and everyone has a different thing they do, and everyone is a little different. And they're like, well, you should do this or you should do that, and you're like, but this person's telling me this, and this person's telling me that. I don't know what to do. So anyways, we'll go through all that in future episodes. I feel like this is a really good place to wrap up. How do you feel about that?
Sounds great.
Awesome. Everybody, join us next week and we'll have another podcast for you. We're going to focus more on going through the testing itself, getting the license, and that should be fun. Have a fantastic
Yay.
one. Thanks for joining me, Lauren.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much for listening to our podcast. You can scan a QR code in the lower left-hand side of the screen or click a link in the description. Have a fantastic one.